Hello and welcome to Minter Dialogue, episode number 460. My name is Minter Dial and I'm your host for this podcast, a proud member of the Evergreen Podcast Network. For more information or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcasts.com. So this week's interview is with Warren Richmond. Warren is founder and CEO of Situ.Live, a completely new concept for retail based in West London. Warren is also chair of the Retail Marketing Group, connecting tech brands with consumers across the world. In this conversation with Warren, we discuss the Situ.Live concept, how they strive to create a novel experience for shoppers, their business model, choice of brands, selection of personnel, and much more around the future of retail. You'll find all the show notes on minterdial.com. Please do consider to drop in your rating and review. And don't forget to subscribe to catch all the future episodes. Now for the show with Warren Richmond. Warren Richmond, what a great pleasure it is to have you on the show. You are an inspiration in what you are trying to do. You're the CEO and founder of a very new retail concept called Situ.Live. You're also chair of the Retail Marketing Group. And I wanted to have you on the show to let's dig in on the future of retail. So first of all, Warren, in your own words, how'd you like to describe yourself?
Me? Well, firstly, what a welcome. Thank you very much, Minter. And thanks for having me on. A bit about me, I suppose, how would I describe myself? Probably maybe a product marketeer. I think I've always been fascinated in products and how they help us live a better life since a very early age. And I grew up with very little, actually. So that entrepreneurial spirit kind of courses through my blood a little bit in terms of just making my way in the world. So there's two angles there. I think entrepreneurial spirit and a bit of a product marketeer, somebody fascinated in stuff.
And in to get into Warren's mind, then which are some of the brands that he might tattoo on his body? The products that you love.
Oh, what a I have to say Spotify is my first go-to. I know it's a service, but when I discovered actually Napster before Spotify with Sonos, when I helped Sonos when they launched in the UK, and then Spotify, who doesn't love music and who doesn't love the feeling of what it does for you? So the ability to just have any song anywhere is definitely worth a tattoo. I'm not sure where it would go, but definitely worth a tattoo. Yeah, that's probably my go-to, Minter. I don't know if I can have any more tattoos.
Well, first of all, I'm not asking you to tattoo just yet. Tattoo you, someone said that. Do you have a favorite playlist?
I sort of made my own, and it's kind of eclectic. It's quite a mix. Some of it's probably quite embarrassing, not that I really care anymore. And it goes from probably a little bit of classical when you're feeling in that type of mood, right through to probably a bit of more contemporary pop. And actually, I've got two young boys, and they are my eldest, who's now just turned 11. He's listening to some really interesting stuff. So I'm starting to feel old and like I'm not right, sort of keeping up with what the kids are listening to. So I've got to get beautiful. On it.
Well, I don't know if it's any consolation, but my children are into their 20s, and they're listening to, it seems, my age of music, 70s and 80s, at least as much as the modern music. So we'll see where that goes. Warren, now let's talk about how you got to where you got to. Let's say, the founding of and running of Situ.Live. What's your background to get to this point?
I'll go right back. One of my early jobs was actually demoing printers, as exciting as that sounds, and it was actually, by the way, in PC World. Exactly that. In fact, we were demoing at the time and selling dot matrix printers. This was back in the late 90s in PC World. That was very exciting. But I sort of found a passion for demoing product to people who really didn't know what this tech coming through did. So did quite a bit of that. Ended up setting up my own agency to do that for brands like Samsung and LG in my kind of mid-20s, but very quickly became quite disillusioned, I suppose, with the retail market, in the fact that actually there were some great products out there, and things like cost of space, margin, lots of that kind of more commercial stuff and how retail worked got in the way of really bringing stuff to life. And only the brands that could afford to bring it to life were the brands, that already made it. So you'd already seen the product. So I think the start for me was, well over 10 years ago when I started dreaming about, well, what if retail became something different? And then me being me, I sort of obsessed about how would one change retail if one could. The next sort of 10 years ensued. It's been an interesting journey since then, really.
So if I hear from you correctly, what you're saying is that it sounds like the best retail is no longer about discovery because the brand is already well known and is attracting people to it because the brand doesn't need to be discovered anymore.
I think the brands with big cash have already got the ability to put their product out there. And we do know some really good examples of good retail, like Samsung have got experience stores and Apple, but these are brands that can afford to do those kind of things, and if they choose to, bring their product to life. I think when you talk about discovery, it's a great word, by the way, Minto. Discovery is a fantastic word. There is so much to discover from so many brands who actually probably can't afford to even get into retail. And when you see, certainly through COVID, so many more D2C, direct-to-consumer D2C brands opening up with really interesting product. An electric scooter from an unknown British brand based down in the Southwest. It's a fantastic product, but bringing that to life somehow, really, really important. So I think the word discovery, definitely. How do you discover products in their natural, real setting in a really cost-effective way for brands, and that does something for the consumer that allows you to enjoy it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So I mean, I when I look at retail, as I've had the pleasure and chance to do over the many years in many, many countries, I often see promise, but the challenge is delivery, execution. And one of the challenges that I see in retail so heavily is the personnel, because as a rule, it's not attracting top university graduates. Let's just say the pay doesn't equate. It's not highbrow stuff. It's really about service, and the delivery of that experience through the personnel seems to be the hardest thing. In your experience, what do you think is the hardest part of retail?
I think I kind of want to answer that and address that point you just made, because I don't disagree, actually. I think the hardest part in retail is probably right now working out what the purpose of retail is, actually, and addressing the people side, which, managing people and getting the right people and the right balance with a certain job and a certain desire, that is a challenge. I honestly feel, Minter, that the commercial model of retail is wrong. And therefore, if the commercial model is around sales on the day and you get sales associates, and we know they're called sales associates, and merchandisers to stack shelves, but you are competing with the digital space, which is doing the same, then I don't know where the investment will come from to put into really good hiring processes, pay, training, etc. I think if you change the commercial model, so actually the purpose of retail is about the experience, then actually you've got a different mandate, and you've got investment capital to put into better quality staff, let's say, or better training for staff, or a better pool of staff. And as an example, without blowing our own trumpet, literally just this morning, we pushed the button to hire an actual chef, which is highly exciting, to hire an actual chef to be live in our Bosch nutritional kitchen. So that suddenly changes the game, rather than getting a sales associate to be helping you to buy an oven. I mean, it's just a completely different kettle of fish, and it's because the investment is now pointed at a different thing, if that makes sense.
You have different expense lines per se.
Absolutely.
Which means you can shift it around. I was reading last year, there was an article that talked about how Oxford Street put up a big sign saying, let's change the way we shop. I kind of feel like it's let's change the way we sell in a shop. is the real notion, as opposed to telling us how consumers how we shop. The issue is more with the businesses and the retailers themselves, and trying to reconfigure the way they sell in a shop.
I couldn't agree with you more. It goes back to the purpose of retail. I love the Harry Selfridge example on the turn of the century, opening Selfridges and the things that he did to change the way we shop. But now, because of the digital age, it is the way we sell. Because let's face it, majority of people go into a store, an environment, they experience stuff, they see stuff, and then they research online, and then they'll buy somewhere else. So retail premises and retail locations isn't necessarily just about sales. It is about actually the experience, and it is about the discovery. So the sales piece, I mean, it's a great phrase you raise, change the way we sell, because people are buying online. So how can physical bricks and mortar sustain something that's not happening? Again, it comes back to that commercial model. And then, the shopping is the outcome, isn't it?
It is. In an article I read, there's a woman called Lindy Woodhead, who's a fashion industry expert and author of the book Shopping, Seduction, and Mr. Selfridge. You just raised the Selfridges story. She says that the main reason people want to visit Selfridges is the building.
It's a shame, really. You'd think it was the people, I would hope. I mean, it's a beautiful building, I have to say, and it's in a relatively good location. I think it's got to be what is filling buildings. And we've looked at a lot of different avenues in property, actually, and we know there's a lot of property around, and lots of property conferences on space and lettings, and landlords are having a tough time. But surely this is all about what fills building, what attracts you to what's inside something. And it's got to leave a lasting feeling, an impression, which I suppose in some respects, Minter, a building can. I'm sure the architects will say it will, but it's got to be about people and engagement and discovering something that leaves a lasting impression. Not that I'm disagreeing, and it's a great title for a book. I love her book. It sounds great.
It is. So the state of retail, obviously around the world, is fairly similar, but let's describe specifically in the UK where we are in retail today. The numbers, are we coming back? What's the deal with the retail numbers, and how do you describe, let's say, online versus offline, and where the growth is or isn't?
I think, I really feel we're at a turning point, a massive turning point. I think footfall numbers are still buoyant. I think if you look at what human nature says, humans want to do stuff. And I remember seeing the articles, forget retail for the moment, but the articles of if you remember in the news, between the two lockdowns last year, people flooding to beaches in the summer, and the close proximity, even though you had to be 2 foot apart. I just the amount of people just getting out there and doing stuff. People want to do stuff. So going to a place where, whether it's retail or whether it's leisure or whether it's other activities, people want to get out there and experience stuff. So footfall numbers are up. Retail sales, where is that coming from? I think it's really difficult to tell because the blurring lines between people purchasing online, in store, purchasing online after they've been to a store, purchasing in store after researching online. I think the lines are really blurred, and we see data, but how valid is the data? All that we can say is that sales are still happening, whether it's online or offline. I really believe that offline has its place in facilitating an online transaction. And again, that's what Situ's really trying to challenge. The final thing I will say is having been on a few different panel conferences in the coming past few months, there's some really interesting new initiatives, whether it's pop-up initiatives or others in the retail space. And I'm really excited. You're seeing that the seeds of change happening now. There really is a turning point happening for those entrepreneurial businesses or people out there that want to not even capitalize, just change something. And I think we're going to see a very different use of the word retail in the next decade, which I think is fascinating and really exciting.
Mm. Which is a wonderful, I think, time to start talking about actually what is Situ? What is Situ.Live, Warren?
Do you know, to be honest, Minter, before we opened, we really struggled to sort of describe and explain it. And I think now I would feel very confident in kind of describing it as a living magazine. We have an editor, actually. We hired in an editor from a very popular tech magazine, and he writes editorial content and copy and stories which our presenters in the venue use and talk about to people that come in. We also have 6 experiential theatres. So if I go back to the kitchen example, we've got the Bosch nutritional kitchen, but that also features appliances by Sage with their fantastic coffee machines, Tefal, etc. And we can therefore present a real kitchen, a real life environment in an experiential theatre where we're cooking real food and we're giving you real coffee to taste. Because rather than a product on a shelf getting dusty with a box underneath it at £1,000, you want to touch the machine, feel the machine, taste the coffee, because fundamentally that's what the product's going to do for you. It's going to give you coffee. So really, a living magazine is bringing the best of what the products can do for you and how it helps you enhance your life. The last bit is we've got the digital side where you can then QR code any product you see. And the aim and what we're building towards is then showcasing all the places you can buy the products. So whether that's Currys or John Lewis or AO or direct from the manufacturer, we can then show you the best deals and the best prices in the market, which no other, whether you call it retailer or place, can do or is doing at the moment in retail. So I hope that describes it well enough.
It's lovely. In listening to you, Warren, it makes me, let's say, understand that at some level, you're really not considered a threat by your competitive stores.
I champion, and I've said this many times, I really champion anything that puts stuff into the physical high street. I think we are humans that need to go out and see stuff. It would be such a shame to see environments close that could be so vibrant. And I'm not saying we have the answer to every high street right now, but whether it's Amazon 4-star or John Lewis or, the more investment that can go into physical spaces that does really exciting stuff for people, that gets our vote at Situ, and we want to help and support that. So we wouldn't consider ourselves a threat to online, clearly. I mean, that would be hard, but we want to complement any physical retail, and certainly complement any brand that wants to come in as well.
And I suspect that the world should be looking at the UK. It was Napoleon who said we are a nation of shopkeepers. And what happens on the retail side in the UK may be you may be a harbinger of what's to come in the future. And it's interesting when you talk about in the press, I've seen you talk about how you really want to change the economic business model of retail. Usually that, like an Uber, entails some kind of massive disruption and usually a little bit of hate mail. Whereas you really are embracing all of retail within your shop. And yet you're a shop where you can buy nothing. I mean, not off the shelf.
Yeah. I haven't had any hate mail yet either, and I suppose I'm a lover, not a fighter. So there you go. I wouldn't like to get any hate mail, but I think doing this for good reason and doing this for the right purpose, disrupting for good. And I sort of like the word disruption, but we need to do it for the right reasons and for good reasons, and kind of work with the rest of retail. I think for us, we definitely want to disrupt. We've definitely had only positive reviews at the moment from anybody coming in, and we're only 4 months into a new vision, really. So we've got a long way to go, and we've got a lot that we want to do. Your example about sort of maybe Uber or maybe even Airbnb and some of these other examples, they're definitely interesting, disruptive commercial models. I think we have looked at people first, because that's what makes up a society. It's not tech first, it's people first. And therefore that dialing up, as we mentioned earlier, of people and how they engage with other humans coming in is really important to us. And I think if you start there, people connecting with people, and you can do it in a commercially viable way, then hopefully we will get lots of love mail, not hate mail. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
I want to get back to the business model, but it makes me think of a concept in France that's called Café Joyeux, and that means the happy coffee. And so they have now 6, I think, outlets across France, not just, there's the one in Champs-Élysées in Paris, but in other towns around the country. And their concept is that their personnel generally all have some kind of disability. And therefore there's a very much a humane element to it. So when they start in a store in a town, Rennes or whatever, all the people who are hired are also spokespeople somehow, and are going to naturally bring in people behind this cause. How beautiful that coffee can be served in a great way, in a great location, by wonderful people. And so it really speaks to this notion of people first.
Yeah, I think, we are really, really passionate, I suppose is the only word I can use, about how we could develop individuals. I think we've got a bit of our cause. We haven't quite put it out there yet. I think there's a lot we can give back, and that is really important. I love the Timpson example. If you know the Timpson example of bringing people that have been, in prison into work straight away. And I don't know the depth of that, but some of the writings of that organization have been fantastic. So I think causes to do with growing, whether it's young guys and girls that have come out of uni and are not sure what to do next, or people that are looking for further education, or people who are just looking for something to start a career. I mean, I came personally, didn't know my father growing up. Mum was incredibly young when she had me. We had nothing growing up. So for me personally, I felt retail saved me. It kind of gave me an entry into a job, and helped me started to earn money in a time when I actually needed it for food at a young age. So yeah, I think retail has a massive place to help people, whether it's earning or learning about living a better life, and doing more of that would be absolutely what I think we could bring to the economy as well. And the less retail jobs, the more the economy will suffer, in my opinion.
So the way my brain manages, I listen and I connect disparate thoughts. You said live a better life in just what you said. And that was actually a half of the slogan for the brand that I ran for 4 years, called Redken. And our slogan was earn a better living, live a better life. So it's a shared
Amazing
thought, of course, as all about execution afterwards. Just before, Warren, we were talking about Selfridges on Oxford Street. So a building in a location. Situ.Live is located in Innovation Alley in Westfield Mall. I have to imagine you spent a lot of time thinking about where you wanted to launch Situ.
Well, yes, and it's a highly controversial subject in my mind, because we were ready and waiting to launch at the end of Regent Street and Piccadilly. If any of the listeners remember Tower Records, which was then a Virgin megastore, it's a beautiful building owned by the Crown Estate, who seemingly are fantastic landlords, because we had such a great relationship with them. And then just before signing, COVID hit. So all the plans, designs, all the work we'd done for almost 2 years, ready to launch this fantastic location, which was very standalone and probably very Selfridges, in the same way as you described that building, were thrown out, I'm afraid. So yeah, I mean, COVID's affected a lot of businesses, and obviously it's affected retail dramatically. But
A sad moment. Go ahead.
I wasn't sure there was going to be a trombone, but there we go. It's there. So yeah, I think for me, we changed. We pivoted very, very quickly. And you know what I think we've produced, we're really excited about. And actually, in some respects, you make the best, don't you, of the things that are put in front of you. So
That's right.
even if there was a trombone halfway through that discussion.
Interruptions, disruption. So your location, you finally settle on Westfield, which, for those who don't know it, it's a very strong, big retail presence in the west of London. And it has a range that goes all the way up to high luxury. Your alley in particular, where you're located, is right opposite the Apple Store, which must be quite the anchor within Westfield, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah. And so let's just talk about your concept and the space you have. You talked about the 6 experiential lounges, or I can't remember, theaters that you have within your space. Does it have to be, is this something like a model that you'd want to reproduce? Or is this basically a showroom just to prove a minimum viable product? What's your strategy with regard to Situ?
No, so we having launched this, we are definitely planning to grow at pace. We, as all sort of new initiatives, we're learning some really valuable lessons of the things that are working really well and the things that are working not so well. And we have a real culture of learning, failing fast, all the kind of good stuff that you would expect. We've had some fantastic wins, which we didn't expect, actually, which are really exciting. And actually, as the world starts to shift, and as we see this dramatic shift, even in the types of products, we're learning a lot there. We've had a lot of conversation with the brands who want to move at pace to other locations and see this as a real opportunity. So yeah, I think there's two angles, Minter. I think the first angle is how we can scale in an easy and replicated way, which we've got a notion for, and opening our second site either at the end of the year or the beginning of next year. That's to be TBC, but we've got a couple of other initiatives that we want to trial first that looks at the digital angle. We've got something that we're doing in potentially hotels, and actually having some other talks in just a little bit of expansion potentially in Westfield. So we're sort of looking a bit broader, but also, yes, scaling some of what we've learned that does work now is definitely on the card, but not just UK. I think if we look at where the audience is and when e-com is high, we know that France, Germany, US, Canada, and Japan are definitely target markets for us over a rapid expansion over the next few years. But of course, we're 4 months in, early days, got to learn some lessons.
Mm-hmm, sure. Consolidate where we are. So let's get into the nitty gritty of the business model, because as I said, it's a large space, 6 experiential lounges, and yet I can't walk out of the store with a product. So talk us through the model that allows you to have this discovery, this experiential space in order to fund, because there's always money involved.
Yeah, isn't it a shame? Wouldn't it be beautiful if we had a world where it wasn't and we could just do amazing things for each other? That will happen one day, no doubt. It's really simple. Brands ultimately want to showcase great innovation, and it's really hard to find a place for brands to allow you to get your hands on experiencing the latest innovation. So there is a real opportunity there for anyone, and we bridge that gap for the moment, and I'm sure others will come along. So that's the first thing. There is a need for brands to showcase things in real life. Brands subscribe to our model on a monthly basis, and the aim, Minter, is to get their brand subscription fee as low as possible, and then the connection with as many consumers as possible, both online and offline. And therein short is the model. Brands brands effectively are paying for that connection with a shopper, with a consumer. And if we can get the economics right, so as I say, the ROI definitely is there for the brand to connect, then that becomes very, very scalable. And we're already seeing it where we can prove either the sales for some brands who want to say, are we making sales? Because QR coding and then buying somewhere else, we can still see where that happens, and then we can still attribute it. Can't always at the moment, and that's something that we're learning and growing. Brand awareness or product awareness, because again, seeing product digitally, that's great, but actually really getting close and personal with the product and spending 10 minutes with a product, you're more likely to fall in love with it, right? So actually showcasing that more with certain products as well. So there's a blend of objectives, and the objectives slightly differ from different brands. And again, that's been some of the learning over the past 4 months. But brands want to continue investing. I mean, even with the latest wave that we've had over the past few months, our revenues haven't dipped. We've been consistent. And we maintain what we do, and it's still seeing good results for the brand.
Yeah, I'm imagining that obviously the attribution directly to sales is the Valhalla kind of signal that so many marketers and CEOs are programmed to want to follow. But attribution of, hey, this 10-minute experience led to eventually a sale. There's going to be a need somehow for your subscribers, your brand subscribers, to be able to justify the expense all the same. And I'm wondering to what extent you're able to help them with these numbers other than just the straight attribution of the sale.
Yeah, and I think the word is definitely consideration. I mean, when you launch a new product, how do you get it literally into the hands of people to then consider purchasing it, especially when some of these products are a little bit more complex, especially when you've got, automated blind systems are not easy to consider until you've really experienced it on a sort of more mass market. So for a company like Lutron, it's great to bring some really amazing tech and product to the high street where people wouldn't usually even consider that. Seeing the latest, TVs have been around for a long time, but seeing a TV in a different setting or a Tefal steamer and actually how it's getting creases out of your garments instantly, seeing that and raising that consideration and showing that a purchase will happen a lot quicker after you've experienced the product is definitely the X marks the spot that we're trying to prove. So the attribution of sales is always going to be the holy grail for any form of marketing at some point, but launching new product, it's definitely the start of that funnel of consideration and how we shorten that journey. The big win that I can definitely share was within 6 weeks, we had a £220,000 sports car with Maserati, and one did get actually sold after somebody seeing it for the first time in situ, and that individual we know wouldn't have even considered Maserati as a brand before. So now that's a bit different because it's a car and it's big and it's a bit more wow, but it proves a point. How we do that for lots of different brands at lots of different price points is what we are now proving, I suppose, and that's the thesis that we've got to carry on doing.
So I want to, Maserati on the right-hand side as you walk in, very impressive, beautiful brand, obviously high-end, and yet Tefal, for the French people listening, they will know that that's not the highest end of the cookery and crockery side of the business. In Russia, there's a retail chain in the beauty area that's called the Golden Apple, nothing to do with Apple, probably everything to do with Eve. Puts luxury beside cheap products because that's what the consumer wants. And yet, if I know most boardrooms who are in luxury, they wouldn't want to say, well, why would my luxury item sit beside this, low-end piece of, And so talk us through the choice, the selection of brands that you have and the types of discussions with regard to the range of offer that you have, and does a Maserati fit comfortably beside Tefal?
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I know, by the way, I know what you mean by beside Tefal. In terms of adjacency, I think what we've managed to pull off is I wouldn't say luxury kitchen as an example. I would say a premium kitchen, a high quality kitchen with high quality stuff. But we started with a shopper and what would they have in their life. And I think having a showpiece at the front, which is an interesting aspirational draw, has been something that has been really, really interesting. So we have seen probably two types of consumer. I think we've seen this is an aspirational draw. I'm really excited. I want a picture with a Maserati product because it is luxury. And then actually, as I've walked into the venue, it's opened up my eyes. And we've got probably we're aiming for three different types of product for three different types of consumer. I wouldn't even say good, better, best, but it's definitely, if you want premium bordering on luxury, if you want good quality bordering on premium, and if you want kind of just something that's very good quality, then in different product categories, we've got a different product to suit. We can't obviously do that with cars at the moment in our space because we can only fit one car in. So I think as the format starts to change and we expand our sizing, we can then get more cars and play with that. So it's an interesting answer, I suppose, because I think it's somewhat aspirational. But then we have had the consumers that have seen it in the window and said, yeah, that's for me. And if you notice, and for anyone who hasn't been in, Maserati has its own almost little showpiece. So if you like, it's the Living magazine. It's almost like a very good quality advertorial in the middle that you open and you see it and you go, wow, that's a good aspirational piece. So yeah, and in answer to your question about product selection, we're playing and learning. We have an editor, we have some sort of editor's choice. And I think we're really going for sort of the premium angle, but not premium for people that can afford it. It's more, if you buy premium, we'll end up with less landfill because it lasts longer, and if you buy better quality, it actually works out better for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. One of the areas of interest for me is brands, and obviously, there's a lot written about how people are more interested in the purpose of brands and the ecological footprint and so on with brands, and how much of the purpose of brands falls into your choice. Because at the end of the day, if schlocky premium brand, schlocky meaning no purpose, just out there to make a buck, comes to your store, and I'd love to take a quarter of your store, I'm paying the premium plus 10%. Are you going to accept me?
No, 100% not. And I can say that with conviction because we've turned some brands down on exactly that. In fact, we've turned a couple of brands down based on the fact that we actually just didn't feel that they understood what we were trying to do. And that's not meant to sound bullshit or arrogant. It's just, we are a very purposeful business. I say to a lot of people, and I hate to sound morbid, this is supposed to sound positive, Minter, but we all die one day. It's a fact. That and taxes, they're two facts. We've got to enjoy what we do, and we've got to do it for the right reasons. And that is my mantra for everybody. And if we stop enjoying it and we stop doing it for the right reasons, then we've obviously just gone in the wrong direction. So how on earth did that happen? And the fastest way for that to happen is the wrong customers, suppliers, etc. start leading you down the wrong path. So absolutely, when we talk to brands and we really understand that they have products and they want to help people live a better life, and that is the first tick in the box, then we know we can work together. I think when we have found brands that haven't, and we've sort of said, should we give it a go? It hasn't worked straight away for us. It's got to be more purposeful, and we've got to go on that journey together because it is a partnership. It's not us taking money from brands. I've already said we're trying to get the lowest cost for brands to give the highest ROI. So it's got to work in that way. And I have to say, some of the brands we work with now, and almost all of them, they are a fantastic bunch. I mean, the leadership teams get it. They are focused on their brand and getting good quality premium out there, not just sales. Of course, we're looking for sales as well, and brands are. But the leadership teams we're trading with and talking to, it's such a fantastic group of individuals. So, I'm afraid your brand, we're paying 10% extra in the corner until you find your purpose, which you will do one day. We're going to have to reserve judgment.
So a lot of department stores will have buyers. These buyers will be specialized in the category of white linen, or obviously more like a linen department, or a kitchen department, and so on. So they'll be very familiar with all the ins and outs, the novelties, and the brands. Where for you, who's the buyer that can know what is, of course, a luxury car? Maybe it's Warren Richmond. Straight all the way down to using the Tefal steamer, to the Sonos, which you worked as well. But how does a buyer at Situ work? Because they have to be quite broad in their knowledge.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. There's two quick things. I mean, go back to commercial model. We've removed a lot of cost out of retail, including buyers that are highly expensive, and therefore it allows the economic model to stand up. So that's one first tip. The second thing is we have a great chief marketing officer who leads the charge on a lot of that category selection, and probably name check James Day, who has been an editor for years at a leading publication and has done so many reviews on product, and actually just his mind and views on the latest things that are coming out for consumers and what's good and what's maybe not so good. I think that insight and that knowledge and that fascination that he has, especially in the innovation in tech world, is really, really important. So it's more editorial selection, but that's hard, Minter, because then we have to either, do we approach brands, or if brands approach us, how do we play it? So we have all collaborated on that. It's still early days, and with some brands, actually, as a leadership team, it came to a sort of on the move kind of debate. We've had this brand, we're not sure if it 100% fits. Can we do a show of hands and had a sort of vote between six? It'll never be me, by the way. I'll always be the last vote, and always maintain I don't really want to make too many decisions. I think it's all about empowerment of others. So yeah, we have had those moments where we've said not quite sure, let's take a vote. But broadly, we've got some really good expertise on editorial and seeking out the latest gadgetry. Oh, and lastly, CES, which has just happened. If you know, Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas every year, just happened in the beginning of Jan. We always go every year. It's a great opportunity to find the latest innovation, the latest electronics. And actually, it's been moving away from electronics, even to L'Oreal presented one year. We're getting plant-based burgers and food presenting there now. So, even where a show like that is going in terms of its innovation for the world is really fascinating.
It sounds like an editorial staff at a newspaper deciding what goes on the front page. And it seems like a very similar type of process, especially when you have an editor at the charge.
Exactly.
All right, so in the nitty-gritty, another thing for me is to talk about the subscription model, because Maserati takes up quite a considerable footprint of your store. And I'm guessing Tefal takes a much smaller, obviously takes a much smaller footprint. How do you come up with a subscription pricing, considering there's footprint as well as maybe like sound that needs to travel, like Sonos? It's not the footprint of the item underneath the television that you're going to be marking, because you have an entire space set up to listen to the wonderful sound and really get that feeling in a private, almost like if it's in my living room feeling, because you can even put the blinds down around the outside. So how do you price these subscriptions?
So we've got three tiers. We've got a really exciting entry-level tier for the startup brand, the brand who hasn't been in retail yet, needs a really low price point. And actually, that's a model we've been playing with. That's probably our biggest learning, Minter, over the past few months. So we're bringing that to life in the coming months. So you'll see some change there in the next editions. We have a top-end pricing, which is then more a kind of anchor subscription placement, which is more, as you've suggested, Maserati or something like the Oculus, where you need a kind of fixed area, and it is more about space. But then for the rest of it, it's definitely around building the environment, and then a subscription per product, per brand, to weave into that environment. There's a standard subscription charge to make it fair and easy, but then there's a couple of logistics fees or additional costs if it's an oversized product or needs heavy installation. So in the main, we've got a standard subscription across all in that middle tier. And it seems to work, and it's fair for all, but it's taken a couple of years to get even just the pricing right, actually, to be honest.
Well, I imagined as much. So the last area I wanted to talk with you, Warren, is about getting Situ known, because like we know, you need people to come, and you've got the attraction of being in front of Apple Store. I came over to it just because I'm always curious. I'm like, what is Situ.Live? I see there are two sales assistants, or like people, two women standing outside, and I get interested in this experience, and I look into the mirror, and I slowly but surely get into your model. What is Situ doing about marketing the brand and bringing people into the store? Where's your focus on that, and what's working for you?
Well, first question, I'm not sure if this is out of protocol, but would you come back, Minter, after experiencing it? I'm putting myself out there.
Yeah, well, I would, but I wouldn't come back only. So it would be, I'd be curious to see what's there now, what's changed, because I've been. But that's also because that's sort of my curious nature. I want to see how they're evolving. And if I have time to spare, because that's the issue. Oftentimes I'm going for a specific item at a specific store. And if I need to wobble the path to the Apple Store, there are many things that can distract me. I'll get a bite to eat. And where's my time going to be spent, my extra time before? But certainly for me, I think I had a really interesting experience exploring the new Sonos experience. I was like, oh, that'd be kind of cool. And I didn't have time to go do some cooking and check that out. But definitely I feel a different experience in your store. The trick and the challenge, of course, is not just getting into your store, but maybe to your website as well. So I'm wondering for you how you can attract people to do more explorations and so on. Where are you going to find success there?
So I asked the question because I think the first thing we definitely want to make sure we get right is that it's a place that has enough that makes you want to come back if you're in Westfield. I mean, it's, I'm at this stage, will people make a destination to come to Situ? We've got to give them a reason. There's a few really interesting initiatives. There's a record label that we are very, very close to now signing up for the stage, which then starts to put live well-known acts on the stage, signings like I remember HMV used to do on Oxford Street, which is just something that's missing and lacking in our world. So doing more of that type of activity. Now we're not established yet, but we're open after 4 months open or 3.5 months. We have now the opportunity to start to bring some of those other brands to life, which obviously then helps the promotion of drawing us as a destination. So I think phase one was start to build a place that people want to come back to and start to create a reason to do that. So in the coming months, we'll see the membership program roll out. So there is a reason. We'll see initiatives, as I've already mentioned, like the record label. So those kind of things are going to be happening. In terms of actually marketing, we've played with a few different formats. Marketing is one of those things that could be the biggest expense for any business, and again could really damage the model if you don't get it right, because you don't really know where the money's going and you just keep plowing money into it. And of course that might sound very cheap, but we put more money into stuff, the costs go up, or you need to put more investment, you end up losing control. So we've played with different options, and actually some of the press activity that we've done in the media with the Times, etc., has gained us really great traction. So we've gained quite a few members on the website. Again, they've got to have a reason to come back, but quite a few members and a lot of footfall in. But the really interesting thing is we haven't really sought out any Google reviews yet, but we're starting to get 5-star Google reviews, which is all nice because they're not forced. They just naturally happen. But we're actually seeing people coming back. The teams in store, in venue, are seeing the same faces coming back. And that's a really nice feeling because people are coming back and looking at something again or getting another experience. So yeah, it's not a one-size-fits-all answer at the moment. And I think we're trying to learn what is the best way of getting this to work. The last thing I will say is a lot of brands are really wanting to use the influencers that they have. And we're in talks with a lot of brands around bringing those celebrity influencers in, which again will then draw a footfall and a pull.
Well, I've always said that the strength of experience is what drives word of mouth. And if you can create surprises, you can create unicity in those experiences, some sort of sense of deep personalization for Minter, for me, this thing, and I get to go have this experience. It's a little bit different from everybody else, or at least outside of Situ, then that'll help spread the word. Warren, lovely to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming in. I know you've been under the weather recently, but it didn't sound it for a second, given your energy. How can people find out more about Situ.Live as well as Warren Richmond?
Situ.Live.com is the place to go, or better still, get out and support physical retail and head down to Westfield in London, in White City. I'm on LinkedIn heavily. So if anyone looks up my name on LinkedIn, please connect with me. I'd love to chat to people. And if anyone wants to start a conversation, I'm a talker, as you can hear, Minter. And it's been lovely talking to you. I'm glad I only got one trombone, and I need to now work out where I'm getting a Spotify tattoo. So that's my big takeouts from today.
Hey, listen, great. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks, Minter. Bye.
Thanks for having listened to this episode of the Minter Dialogue podcast. If you like the show and would like to support me, please consider a donation on patreon.com/MinterDial. You can also subscribe on your favorite podcast service. And as ever, rating and reviews are the real currency for podcasts. You'll find the show notes with over 2,000 and more blog posts on MinterDial.com. Check out my documentary film and 4 books, including my last one, You Lead, How Being Yourself Makes You a Better Leader. And to finish, here's a song I wrote with Stephanie Singer, A Convinced Man.
I like the feel of a stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust is the reason, still I won't toe the line. I sit here passively, hope for your respect, anticipating the thrill of your intellect. Maybe I tell myself there's no use in me lying. I'm a convinced man, building an urge. I'm a convinced man, to live and die submerged. A convinced man, in the arms of a woman. I'm a convinced man, challenge my fate. I'm a convinced man, competition's innate. A convinced man, in the arms of a woman. Despise revenges and struggle with deceit. Live for the challenge so life's not incomplete. What's wrong with challenge? I know soon we all die. I like the feel of a stranger tucked around me, precipitating the danger to feel free. Trust in my reason and let me show you why. I'm a convinced man, practicing my lines. I'm a convinced man, here in man, put me to the test. I'm a convinced man.